Hi, this is Neil Buchanan with Rock Our World. It's now been a full moon month, we're going to call it, and I'm going to attempt to give some explanation on the how God's calendar squares up. That's a bad choice of words, but how it relates and squares up with the Babylonian calendar. And Satan is the author of Babylon, and he brings confusion, and even though we're used to our Babylonian calendar, it's very confusing compared to God's calendar. But as I try to explain it, it's going to seem the other way around. Nonetheless, I'm going to go back a full month now. It's been since we did our big TV program, the Good News TV program, and I reported that there was a great event going to happen on the 16th. And of course, the 16th of April, we're talking about a date on the Babylonian calendar. And so I will begin this attempt to show the differences between the two calendars. And even though it sounds confusing and our minds are full of paradigms, we're actually talking about two different things here, because in the Babylonian system, Babylonian calendar, the day starts at midnight. But on God's days and in his calendar, the day starts at sunset and goes to the next sunset. That's a normal day. But then there's some days that come along that are what we would call 2 days long. And God's simply talking about from one sign to the next sign. So on a typical day, the sign to the sign would be the sunset to sunset. But we'll call it an atypical day, untypical, the first sign could very well be sunset, but then the next sign might be the reappearance of the moon, let's say, the first crescent of the moon, when we're talking about a new moon festival. And about half, in the course of 1 year, we'll have about 12 cycles of the moon. The moon takes 10 days less to do 12 cycles than the sun takes to do its full cycle. So you have to add there will be a 13th month every 3 years to keep it sort of up to date. But that's where the Jewish calendar, they came up with this idea back in Babylon, I expect, and they switched to a moon cycle, calling the months of the year by the moon cycle. And Enoch actually predicts this in his book of Enoch, that in the last days we'd be keeping all the festivals on the wrong days. And everything's wrong. Sabbath days are wrong, the festival days are wrong, the new moon festival's wrong, because the Jewish people went ahead and changed, came up with man-made ideas to run these things, whereas Enoch gave a full description of how the calendar works. I shouldn't say a full description, but almost full, and then there's other bits and pieces found in other parts of Scripture. So anyway, we are always talking about two different systems, so that's why it seems confusing. If we'd grown up with God's system right from the beginning, it wouldn't be confusing at all, and it's actually quite simple. But it sounds complicated. So I'm going to go back. These aren't really corrections, but, well, one of them is a correction, but they're actually a beginning attempt to compare the two systems, and how even though we're just barely beginning to switch over into God's system, it seems like a struggle at first, but as we get more and more rid of the Babylonian system in our hearts and our minds, you'll see that God's system is actually simpler, and Satan's system of Babylon is confusing. And Satan is 20 times smarter than we are, so he was able to do his very best shot at making it very confusing and very difficult to leave Babylon, very appealing. And but God, as the last days unfold, he tells us to get ready to leave Babylon. In the book of Revelation, he says several times, leave Babylon, my people, do not partake of her sins. Now, what are the sins of Babylon? Well, the calendar is one of them. Following the dictates of society, and all these things are connected, obviously. Working all the time instead of taking time to rest. And then as we learn when God's actual rests are, to start doing it on the right days. And the four of us that meet as a home church, my wife and I and Ron and Roberta, we got to the point where we're attempting to switch over to keeping Sabbath on God's Sabbath rather than on the Jewish Sabbath, which is Saturday. And of course, Saturday is a demon, name of a demon from the Babylonian system. So God would never do that. And if you think about it, Sabbath, once you read the scriptures, you find that Sabbath is extremely important. And yet there's nowhere in what we call our Bible that, and actually Bible's the name of a demon too, I pointed that out in a few episodes back. It's God calls it the Torah, the Prophets, and the script and the writings. But there's nowhere in what we call our set of instructions where God actually says how to find the day, until you add the book of Enoch and the book of Jasher and the book of I'm missing one here, Jubilees. And then you go back and look at my 3 episodes I did in New Moon Festival, and you'll see that in fact God did tell us when the Sabbath day is, and it's the moon that tells us when the Sabbath day is. So I'm going to try and do some adjustments, corrections, whatever you want to call them. When I referred to the April 16th as a very important day, that's a number name on the Babylonian calendar. And I intended to do this before I started talking, but I forgot. So I was going to pick out which day it actually was, or is, and was in God's calendar. And I guess I'll have to make another correction on my next episode. But at any rate, when you overlap or interface God's system and calendar over the Babylonian one, you find whereas God starts the day at sunset, which actually would have been the 15th on on the Babylonian calendar, because it starts at sunset, the evening before. And we did make a mistake, the 4 of us that have this home church together. I wasn't watching closely enough, and we started the first day we observed Sabbath on Saturday, and I reported that, but in fact the Sabbath was Friday. We got all together Friday evening, looked at the moon, and here it was quite advanced. It was past where it should have been in the sky, and I kind of suspected we had the wrong day. And by the second Sabbath, when the sign being when the sun goes down in the evening on the second Sabbath, the moon rises simultaneously. And I'm going to say within about a 20-minute window. It can be anywhere from exact to, say, 20 minutes plus or minus. And that's the sign of the second Sabbath. And by that second Sabbath, it was very obvious we had the wrong day. It was what we'd call Friday on our Babylonian calendar. But again, starting at sunset and ending at sunset. So back to this great event on the 16th. It really would have been more accurate to say it was the 15th. And it was in fact Sabbath the day before on the 15th, starting 14th sunset. at any rate, it all coincided with our TV program because we did it on both days, and nothing changed. That was the great event that actually came about, was the riding of the white horse in southern Saskatchewan. And it was the greatest event since Adam and Eve were created in the garden. And as overstated as that sounds, the Lord's been waiting for this for 6,000 years, when the Torah would go out first in southern Saskatchewan, and then it will spread all over the earth. The Torah precedes the coming of the Lord. The Torah is, in essence, the set of instructions, about 600 of them, of which I'm going to guess between 100 and 200 apply to any one person, depending whether they're male, female, a priest, a farmer, a business owner. There's house owners. There's specific instructions for all kinds of different types of people, occupations, and so on. And then there's quite a number that we all need to follow. For instance, we're not to lie, we're not to cheat, steal, commit adultery, we're not to have sex with animals. I like throwing that one in because when you get talking about 10 commandments and how does that equate to 600 commandments, or as the Jewish people insist, there's 613, which could very well be true. Anyway, I'm got a long ways to go here, and I'm not getting very far. So as confusing as this sounds with the interface of the two calendars, as we get more and more used to the God's calendar, it will become simpler. I guess I should just drop that for a bit, because I got a lot of things to go through in this episode 35. I kind of got messed up my tech. I'm not very techy, so I haven't figured out how to upload the last 2 episodes, and this will be a 3rd one. So I got to get connected with my son-in-law here to help me out and sort out. I got the 3 episodes of the 4 horses of the apocalypse all in wrong order. I straightened them out in my own file, but I need some help in figuring out how to straighten them out on the YouTube channel. Anyway, I reported I'm going to get a phone number, and I'm going to try and attempt that again today. And today is now May 6th, 5th. And the Sabbath, the 4th Sabbath of this moon month, is starting at sunset tonight. And the new moon will follow on, well, to interface it with the Babylonian calendar, it'll follow on Saturday. So Friday Sabbath, the 4th Sabbath of the month, and then the new moon will be the 7th. And we've yet to see if we're going to have a 2-day new moon or a 1-day. And as you can see in God's calendar, we're always guessing. So you don't plan ahead. You watch the sky, you watch the signs, you watch the sun and the moon, and the Lord keeps us guessing. He doesn't, there's no way to predict exactly when everything is going to happen. And I had said this before, and I will continue to say it, that the Lord is going to do something very, very dramatic on each of his festival days this year. And the first dramatic event was the riding of the white horse in southern Saskatchewan, and that will spread to the whole earth in the course of time. And it's not going to take too much time. Within a few years, we're going to see the Torah go out to the entire earth, and everyone will hear the truth of the Lord. Everyone. All 7 billion people. And very soon, people will start dying from all kinds of crazy things. We're entering the last days. We already have. And time is speeding up. Things are moving quickly. We're going to see financial disaster worldwide, and we're going to very likely lose our crop this year. Very poor, very, very dry conditions, and it will be a drought this year. And next year, starting, the Jubilee year starts on the Day of Atonement, and I'll keep you up to date on all the festivals as they come about. And as I pointed out, you don't know the exact day until you get quite close to the day, because you don't know the variables of the new moon, whether it's going to be 1 day or 2 days, until it actually happens. And there's other variables like the beginning of the harvest, and I still need to hear from Nehemiah Gordon or anybody else in Israel that is in tune with what's going on there. When did the harvest actually begin? So we have our proper count, but I expect it was the Sabbath of the 15th, 16th of this past month. That's Babylonian speaking. And I will relate to you what day that was on God's calendar. It was the first month, but which day? Forgot to check that out. I'm going to get a phone number in place. I want to do a quick report on the mourning doves. I found more information. It definitely is a sign and a miracle, but it turns out it's a different species of mourning doves, which I have never heard of before or heard. And everywhere I go, they keep showing up. And apparently it's called, I'll get more information on this, but apparently it's called an Asian dove, and they look very, very much like mourning doves. They're a related species, and their song is different. And I've never heard that song in my life before, and I heard it first down in Indio, dozens of times, and then I heard it once up in my own farm, and we just spent a week in Whitewood cleaning up my wife's parents' home, getting it ready for market. They had to be moved into an old folks' home, and they were all over town there. And I have never heard, ever in my entire life, I've never heard their song before, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. And the Lord's using them to show me important people and events. And I met 3 very important people in Whitewood while we were there for a week. And I think very likely people that are going to be helping us on our farm here. Anyway, that's an update on the mourning doves. All of a sudden there's a new species kicking around. I don't know where they came from or why all of a sudden they're everywhere instead of, I've never heard of them before. And I'm a bird guy. I love birds. I've been listening and watching the birds my entire life, which is now 62 years. And what else do I have to catch you up on? I had mentioned Babylon beginning 2,000 years ago. That it's more like 4,000. I do know the number. I've put in my memories banks a few times over the years, but I keep misplacing information. But Babylon was created back in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, and there's close enough records of things like that. You can get within a few years, at least, of history. When Nebuchadnezzar built his empire, that was the first time that there was an organized empire that was, you could call the whole world. But of course, the whole world was smaller at that time, 4,000 years ago. We didn't know really what was going on over here in North America or South America, even though there were things going on. And like the pyramids over here were being built, the Aztecs and those types of people. And apparently it was reported that in the time of Solomon, he sent ships over here to get goods so it was known, the New World was known about a long time ago. And they were much smarter than we give them credit for. A good chance they were smarter than we are today, even though our tech is a lot higher. So, did I cover everything here? What seems to be a confusing to figure out the new system. I will add this. My friend Ron, the way the Lord started dealing with his heart, this was quite a number of years ago. He noticed this in Lamentations 2:6, where the Lord says that he would be so upset with his people that he would cause them to forget about the Sabbaths, and they would lose sight of them. And that is a specific scripture that is also referring to the change of the calendar, and the Jewish leaders, they came up with their own ideas of how the calendar should run, and they've lied about it ever since. And of course, Christians, they're pretty easy to find out. They got all the goofy things like Christmas and Easter, and they follow the Babylonian calendar to a T, and it's all a confusion of men. Both the Jewish and the Christian calendars are all confusion and wrong and full of lies. And so now we're instituting, the Lord has now restored the understanding of his calendar. I'm not going to say I got everything right, but I think most of it is, the basics are in place. The moon tells us when the 4 cycles of the week. A week is an idiom meaning the 6 work days and ending in a Sabbath rest. And then when 4 cycles are complete, then the new moon festival comes, and it's either 1 day or 2 days, and that's what we're just coming into tonight on Thursday, May the 5th. Tonight at sunset will be the Sabbath day, and will last almost 24 hours because it goes to the next sunset, and the days are getting longer right now, fast. They're getting longer and longer and longer, and so it'll be like 24 hours and 10 minutes or whatever. Some people know how fast things change. I think it goes up to 5-6 minutes at its most that it changes per day. And then it'll be followed directly by the New Moon Festival, which will be 7th and possibly 8th. Anyway, I want to throw one more thing in here. I believe we're very close to the international dateline again this cycle. That is, if we go any direction from here, say 1,000 miles, we'll be in a different day. Just like when you cross the international dateline, which has been set at Greenwich for the Babylonian system, you switch from one day to another if you fly one way or the other way. And whereas in God's system, the international dateline changes every month. When a new moon presents itself, and the first Sabbath, the new moon and the first Sabbath. Anyway, you get to see where you are sitting near the international dateline. It'll be somewhere on Earth for a full month, like 4 cycles, and then it'll change to a different spot. So, as confusing as that all sounds, God never, ever, anywhere declared that Greenwich would be the international dateline. That's a human idea, and that's Babylon. So it really boils down to, when you form a believing community, you appoint somebody, or say a group of people, or if everybody wants to take part, but it usually boils down to someone who has the interest to watch the sun and the moon and keep everybody up to date and keep reporting. And between him and a few others, they can appoint some people, and they watch the signs, and they decide, okay, this is going to be the Sabbath, judging from the signs. And of course, you can have some cloudy days, but the Lord always gives there's always an indication ahead of time what things should be. And if you get it wrong, just change it. Don't worry about it. God doesn't care about that. It's men that care about things like that. If you happen to have the wrong day, like we did this last cycle, we started on Saturday thinking that was the Sabbath, but it turned out it was Friday. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. The Lord cares that we're watching the sky for the signs, and that we're doing it His way. He doesn't care if we make a human error. He made us, and He's a trillion times smarter than us, so He takes into account that we're going to make a few mistakes along the way. So I think I covered everything I wanted for this episode 35, and it's been pretty much a month since I last spoke, and I've had a lot of things happen, and a lot of amazing things are going on in our life. The Lord has opened the windows of heaven and poured out a blessing that we're having trouble receiving it all, and I need help So I need qualified people to show up and help us out here in the farm as we prepare it for the last days. So I'm going to sign out. Neil Buchanan with Rock Our World. That's Daniel 2.